Namaste everybody, welcome to our Wednesday afternoon cooking class. Well, today isn't actually cooking, we're blending and we're processing. I'm going to show you how to make that very beautiful Turkish delight cake that you saw at the beginning of this video. So, I made this over the weekend for our workshop and everybody wanted the recipe because it's a very healthy version of Turkish delight and it's sort of like a cheesecakey consistency. So nice and smooth. It's very flavoursome. So it's in 3 steps really. There's going to be the base, then the middle, and then the topping. So we'll start off with the base. I have 2 cups of almonds. Now I'm not going to do completely raw because I like the crunch of the roasted almonds. So I'm going to use roasted almonds, but you could use any nut. Just think Middle Eastern. So probably pistachios, walnuts, something like that. Macadamias are also a nice option. Any nuts at all. Hazelnuts have got that bitterness to it, so maybe if you're making something with a coffee or chocolate flavour, that would go better. So you don't want something that's too overpowering. Okay, so we're going to pop the nuts in our processor. And I've got some dates. Now you can use medjool, you don't really need to soak them. Because they're fresh dates, but I'm using dried because they're much more reasonable in price. I find them just as good actually. There's probably a slight difference in the flavour, but when it all boils down, everybody raves about it, and I just use the dried dates, which are around about $3.50 for a kilo. So I've soaked these for about 10 minutes. You don't want to soak them for too long so that they break down too much. Make sure they're not too moist, so you want to squeeze any moisture out. Otherwise it will go too soggy as a base. So we'll pop the dates in there and we will process. That is, you can actually make them into balls. They'd be very nice just as a health ball. So they should stick together nicely. A lot of the raw vegan cakes, people put a sweetener in the base, but I really think that the dates are plenty. You don't really need to add anything more to the base. Personally, but if you're if you've got a sweet tooth, you might want to add a bit of maple syrup or some other liquid sweetener. So I've got a springform pan, sort of the largest size. I think it's probably 25 centimetres, and I've just covered the base with some baking paper because these sometimes are a little bit hard to get out, so the baking paper just makes it easier to get them out. So I'm going to just press that into the base now. Just make sure it's firm, nice and firm. And if you make them nice and even, it does look nicer when you cut them. So I'm always a little bit pedantic with making it nice and even, so that the finished product does look actually nicer. So if you like your base a little bit finer, you can just keep processing for longer. I like a bit of crunch to the base, so I've left some pieces in there, some pieces of nuts. But most of the dates are broken down, so you don't want big, huge pieces of date. Or maybe you do if you like dates. It's up to you. So you can put this in the fridge. I've never really found the need to do that. So I'm just going to leave it on the bench top. And we're going to do the middle layer now, the Turkish delight layer. Okay, so now we're going to do the middle layer, the Turkish delight layer. I'm very fortunate that I have got a Vitamix. So it's a high speed blender. It's very, very powerful, and it will virtually blitz anything into a liquid. You may not have one of these. They're very expensive. I couldn't afford one these days, but when I had my business, I bought it. And they're about probably $1,500 now. They do last a lifetime, and they are fantastic. It was a really good buy, I feel. You know, I bought it at probably 12 years ago, and it's still going strong. We used it when we had a cafe here, and I use it all the time here for cooking for the mantra room. It's actually, its new home is here. It hasn't been at my place for years because mainly I use it for the cooking for the mantra room. But if you don't have a high-speed blender, there's a few tricks and tips that I can give you so that you can still get a very nice result in an ordinary blender. Okay, so we have here some cashews. Now I'm using the pieces. Sometimes you can get small pieces, but they were out of them when I got there on Saturday morning to buy them. So I just got the larger pieces, but it doesn't matter. The pieces are better. You'll find that they break down better and they soak better. And they're much, much cheaper. These must be just the offcuts. But you're going to blitz it anyway, so it doesn't matter if they look beautiful and plump, because it's like, I don't want to blend these. They're too nice to blend. So I've soaked these for around about at least an hour, overnight if possible, or a number of hours is better. So if you've got a low speed, just an ordinary low speed blender, I would soak it overnight, soak the cashews overnight, and then they'll break down much easier. Now we have what is going to give us the Turkish delight flavour, cranberries. Now if you are using a low speed blender, you would need to soak these first and then squeeze them out to make sure there's not too much moisture in them. I've got the high-speed blender, so I have done it without soaking them, and it still gives me a good result, but the soaking just makes it so much creamier. So I think, you know, it'll work either way, but soaking is going to make that creaminess that you get from a cheesecake. We've got some coconut cream here. It's gone hard. Look at that. So it's separated and gone hard. That shows that it's winter in Brisbane. Someone that came here once, he was from Europe, and he said when the coconut cream and the coconut oil go hard, it's time to leave Brisbane, move to a warmer place. But our winters are very beautiful, so it's not that cold here. But cold enough to get the coconut cream hard. I've got some rose water. That's going to also give it that nice rose watery flavour that Turkish Delight has. I've got a cup here of coconut oil. I buy this from Aldi. It's only $8.99 for a litre bottle, so it's good value. And maple syrup, which also always gives such a beautiful flavour to these raw vegan cakes. I get mine from Costco. It's about $16 or maybe $18 now for a litre, which is very, very reasonable for a maple syrup, which is usually very expensive. And I'm using some vanilla. I like the Queen vanilla. It's all natural, organic. And yeah, you can, the imitation one doesn't give it as nice a result, but you can use the imitation one if you're stuck. I've done that. And I'm going to add a little bit more pink to this. You can use just a natural red colouring. They are around, but I'm just going to use a couple of baby beets out of a tin. I've used the juice before, but I don't want to make this too runny. It's a nice combination, and if you put too much moisture in, you're going to have to really adjust it so you've got more coconut cream, more coconut oil, so that it does go hard. So you don't want to start playing around too much, and you can't taste the beetroot. I made it on the weekend with beetroot, and it adds a bit more nutrition to the cake. So that's all that's going in it. Let's do it. So there's 2 cups of cashews here. Make sure you drain them really well when you've soaked them. The cranberries, 1 cup, around about 1 cup. The beets, maple syrup, coconut oil, got a cup of each. We've got a tin of coconut cream. Put the whole lot in. The water as well as the cream itself. And I love this Aldi's coconut cream. There's very little water in the bottom, very little coconut water. It's nearly all coconut cream. And very reasonably priced. I know I should be working for Aldi, shouldn't I? I'm always giving them a good rap. Now we've got 2 tablespoons of rose water. If you really like a lot of rose water, you can go for it. Just add more. And we've got some vanilla. A couple of teaspoons of vanilla. My mum always taught me a cup is a teaspoon. Actually, I'm going to put 4 in because usually I do 2 per recipe, but I'm doubling this because I'm making a nice big one. So if you want a nice big cheesecake, you can double it and it will fit into that spring form pan. Oh, so we're just going to blend this now. This is probably going to be pretty noisy. This is a very noisy blender. So if you've got a blender like this, you start off very slow and just gradually work up to a high speed. That's all there is to it. How easy is that? Now you can't really go wrong with these cakes. If they are too soft, you just take them straight from the freezer and don't leave them to thaw out too long in the fridge. I like to thaw it out in the fridge if I can. It's better for health and safety to thaw things out in the fridge. So if I was going to serve these cakes out at the munch room, I would take it out at least an hour or 2 before and just leave it in the fridge, probably 2 hours. If I was thawing it on the bench, probably half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour, depending if the cake is whole or you've got pieces. Sometimes I will cut these up once they are set and then put them individually into the freezer so I can just pull one straight out instead of having to thaw the whole cake out. Because once you've thawed it, you're not supposed to refreeze. So that's how I usually do it. I just put them neatly into a container and then I can stack them one on top of the other. So if it is a little bit runny, just don't leave it out so long. So you can't really go wrong. If you have too much liquid in there, you just don't thaw it out as much. So people get more of a frozen sweet, I suppose. Okay, so it's a nice pink colour. Look at that. And just check it before you finish. If you're using a low-speed blender, it probably will be a little bit gritty, but I don't think anyone is going to mind if there's some little gritty cashews in there. It's still going to taste really yummy. But I always check with mine because I know that with this blender it becomes like a cheesecake. So hardly any grit in there whatsoever. And there's one downfall to this Vitamix is getting it out of the bottom there. It's always a real trip getting in around the blade. But everything else about it's really good. That's the only thing I can pick fault with. And you know me, I hate waste, so there's always this little bit left in the bottom that I just cannot get out. But anyway, we've got most of it. So what I'm going to do now is pop this in the fridge to set, and then we're going to do the final layer, which is a chocolate layer. But you really do need to set this well. I would probably set it for at least 2 hours in the fridge or the freezer. Freezer's probably going to be quicker to get it set. It needs to be firm on top so that you can put the next layer on it without it sinking into the cake. Okay, so see you back here soon. Okie dokie, I am back. So this has been in the freezer for a couple of hours and I have I've already put the ingredients in this because it's really, really simple for the chocolate topping. You could do carob if you want, but if you're going to use carob powder, make sure that you sift it first because it does tend to be a little on the lumpy side. So I've put in a cup of coconut oil, a cup of maple syrup, and 3/4 of a cup of cacao or your carob powder if you're sensitive to chocolate. And you need a whisk for this. If you use a spoon, it just doesn't seem to do a thorough job. You really need to get in and mix it all together. You don't really need to put it in the blender. I used to, but I found that just using the whisk is enough. Okay, and we're just going to pour that on top. Oops, messy, messy. And there you have it. A nice, easy, delicious and healthy Turkish delight cheesecake. So I've got the finished product here. I already made one. So this cuts really beautifully. It cuts just like a cheesecake. I'll show you a picture of the slice. I don't want to play around with it too much. I've already cut one piece and taken a photograph because I will be serving this out at the manja room. So I want it to stay reasonably decent for that. And but as you can see there, it's a nice finished product. All I've done here is cut the strawberries in half and put them around the edge. For the photo, I had some beautiful roses in the center. You can put chopped chips or carob chips or some cacao nibs. I've got these little rose petals, edible rose petals, which give it a nice touch. You could do grated chocolate or carob over the top. Pistachios are nice. I've put them on whole, but it's nice if you just blend them up a little bit, or use your mortar and pestle and get the pistachio crumbs because they look really pretty. It's a nice green, so the green and pink go really nicely together. So there you go. I hope you enjoy this cake. Give it a try. And as I said, you can't really go wrong, but don't leave it sitting out for ages on your bench top because it will melt. Maybe not in the middle of winter, but in summer it'll melt really quickly. So it's one of those things you need to take it straight out of the fridge and serve it. Or if you're taking it out of the freezer, don't leave it too long. Otherwise it will start to melt and it'll just sink and you'll find a whole table full of liquid. Okay, so namaste, and I'll see you again next week. Hey Bo. Shivasa